says, "Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads." I'm going to turn the time over to Tom.
So is this working? Is it working? Okay, good. Let's pray before we start. Dear Father, you've blessed us so abundantly. We have everything we need. We have everything that is necessary for salvation. It's all provided by you. And you have called us to something higher than we could possibly imagine. And we're so thankful that you have those ideals for us, and we want to rise to those, but we can't do it. We have no strength, and we ask that you give us your Spirit to empower us to fulfill your plans for us and do that work that you want to do through us. Please, right now, give me your words to speak. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so I'm giving a mission report, apparently. It's very weird to prepare for a sermon this way. It's not a sermon. I don't have any notes. I'll just be talking. So here we go. So this is it's not up there. So that'll be the key, is to you guys be able to see this. Yeah, how about is there a way we could have these lights down too? How's that? Okay, great, thanks. All right, so this is Amacaria. This is the location that Ellie is at. Oh, I guess for those of you that don't know, my daughter Ellie is down in Peru for a year, and we've had a number of people from the church that have made trips to Peru recently, and this is just one in the series apparently, and more are going. Brianna's going in June. Cindy's going in a couple of weeks. Anyway, she signed up for a year there. She's 5 months in now, and I'm going to be telling you about my trip down there to see her, and she invited me down to give an evangelistic series. They have Peru-wide evangelistic campaign that was going on during that week that I was there, and I am just blessed to be a part of that. Amacaria is a community where the entire community had been Adventists at some point back in the 60s, I believe, and since then they've had some falling away, and so I was thinking that rather than giving your standard evangelistic series, I would give a revival series, and so that's what we did. I always like to know where we are, so I'm a cartophile, as we talked last week. So here's the outline of Peru, and here is Lima, the capital, and then the city of Iquitos is here, and that's where Dakota and where Paul Opp works. Here is Pucallpa, and many from the church have visited this location. So we'll zoom in on that. Oh, I guess I can do it here. So here is Pucallpa more close up, and it's on the Ucayali River, and right down here at this point is the community of Amacaria. It's on a little side channel of this large river, and I'm getting some assistance, but we'll need to move right over to here. So this is, you see the airport there, this is 75 miles in a straight line, but if you were to take the colectivo, which is the kind of the local public transit sort of boat, it would take you 18 hours to get there. And part of it is that obviously this river winds around a lot, and part of it is the boat's slow, and it stops over and over again at all these little villages along the way. So fortunately, something you were doing with there we go. Okay, so we'll zoom in here. And so here's Ucayali River. Here's an old side channel, or probably was perhaps even the main channel of the river, and the river moves around. You can see all these scars from where the river's moved. And it's abandoned this channel, and this is now a lake. It's called Yarinacocha. It's spelled right here. Where this little, okay, so here's the public airport, and where this little airplane symbol is where the Peru Project headquarters is. That's their base. And the Peru Project is the people through whom Ellie is doing this ministry. Ellie and Melinda, her partner, in Amakaria. They have 5 villages they're responsible for, and there are another pair with them, Josue and Uber, and Ellie kind of reports to Josue. He's kind of the leader of this, and they're all through the MOVE program, and they're now working through the Peru project. And so we'll zoom in. There is a close-up of, here's the hangar. This runway extends way over into the wall here. Here's the lake, and I don't know what all these little squares are, some pixelation of some sort, not a real feature. So there's a boat launch here. They have here's the view from the hangar looking down at the lake, and right through these trees is the boat launch. So they have, and these boats are ubiquitous. They're just hundreds of them, and they're super loud and going practically all hours of the day and night. Here within the hangar they have this Cessna. It's a land plane, obviously, and then they have this amphibious plane, and they had another plane there while I was there that they were working on. It was somebody else's ministry's plane that they were helping put some pontoons on. This is the plane that we took out to Amakaria. So I don't know if I have... Oh, okay. Yeah, so here's from down at the water looking up at the hangar. The director's house is right next door, and there's some other buildings around. And here is a motor car, but this is one of the industrial strength motor cars. They have these little motorcycle carriage sorts of things that they drive around in. They're everywhere. It's hundreds and thousands of them. And they also have some more industrial ones, and they're going to launch this boat. And so we'll take advantage of this opportunity to see what the surroundings are like while they launch this boat. So they get down to the water, and notice what happens to the motor car. When the boat gets in the water, the motor car tips up, and the guy's up there. Ah! So anyway, that just to highlight. That's not what the trip was all about. I just happened to catch it in photo document for you. Okay, so just to reorient, we're going to fly from here to Amakaria, and I don't know why this remote is unresponsive. There we go. All right, so this area is all within the district of Iparia, and Iparia is this community here, and it's functionally like the county seat. And so here, Amakaria, and so the trip from Amakaria to Iparia is about 2 hours by little boat, or if you went on the Colectivo, you'd probably stop along the way many times, and it would be longer than that. This is an old channel when the rivers cut that off, and now there are communities along this channel that are no longer on the river. But as we'll see later, there's a little passage between here that's quite the wild ride. To zoom in here, so here's Amakaria. It's built around the airstrip. And then this is just a little side channel of the Ucayali River. Here is the town of Nazareth, or what they say in Espanol is Nazaret. And then there's another little village there called Margarita or something like that. I can't remember. And then there's a village here out keep going past the end of the airstrip out through the jungle to this town of La Selva. And Ellie is responsible for Nazaret, Amakaria, I think La Selva, another place called Picuayal, and then Caco is the 5th place. So they travel around and minister to the various congregations. So off we go. We're flying away from the base, seeing more of these boats. They're just everywhere. We'll fly over. Here's why they don't know what the population of Pucallpa is. They think it's somewhere between 200 and 400,000. So it's a wide range, but because of all these kind of impromptu housing arrangements, more of the city. There's the road that goes to Lima. Here is the river. You can see it's quite large. It's much bigger than the Columbia. And it's in flood stage at this time. Out over the jungle, see some of these scars from the channel moving. Very interesting to me. Here's that lake that was cut off in that picture I was showing. Here's a community on it that used to be on the river. And here we are at the port of Amakaria. And I get there, it didn't look anything like this. It was the whole village turned out, and they were all gathered around the sign here waiting for the plane to pull in there. And because I'm not sure how they feel about having their pictures taken, I really didn't take very many pictures of people. And so I think now in retrospect, it probably would have been okay to take a lot more pictures of people, but I was kind of reticent to do so at first, or reluctant, I guess is the right word. So from here, this is the airstrip ends abruptly, of course, at the river, and it extends out into the jungle way at the other end. So the house that Ellie is staying in is way down here. So off we go with our suitcases over this terrain, and that was quite interesting. Ended up carrying them instead of rolling them like we had hoped to. So everything's oriented along the airstrip. There are some side streets that go off. Here's farther down the airstrip, and here's a more close-up view of Ellie's home. These mountains in the background are between 6,000 and 7,000 feet elevation, and the village here is about 500. So it's very much like being in Wenatchee, which is 600 feet, and there's Mission Ridge at 6,800. Way down here is the church, and then way down here is the high school. There are 3 different schools there for different grade levels. That's what greeted me when we got to Ellie's house. Some sort of thing you ride on if you're a child. I didn't try it. And here's her home. And so the owners of the home live in the downstairs, and Ellie and Melinda live upstairs. And the man has many children. Only one of them still lives at home, and he's the youngest boy. He's about 11 or 12, and he lived upstairs as well. And then there were family members that were in and out while they were there. The 2 of his older sons were there, and that was actually quite a problem. They both have problems with alcohol, and they felt actually quite threatened by them, so they were glad to see them leave. And then while I was there were one of those young men, though, came up to me after one of the meetings and said, I want to turn my life back over to the Lord. And I don't know what happened to him, but I want to keep praying for him. His name is Davis. The oldest daughter was living there while I was there with her 2 little girls and her husband. We'll get the little tour here. So here's inside. This is the kitchen. And the kitchens are typically detached from the main home. So modern appliance in the kitchen. Unfortunately, it was not connected to anything. So it is a storage place where you can keep things away from the rats that are everywhere. This is the sink. You just lean out the window and wash your dishes, and everything just drains outside, so that's handy. Because the stove doesn't work, we have a fire to cook on. And here is your water supply. And here are some OSHA-approved stairs to the upstairs. And outside is the well, and it's about probably 3 feet down to the water. The water table is very high. And over here is a pond. And here is the shower facilities for where you take your bucket showers. And another view of these fabulous stairs. And you can see that everything's very muddy and dirty, and they have a few planks to walk on. But I would think if you had a rainy season that happened every year and it took up half the year, you'd have better arrangements, but I don't have to live there year-round. Here is upstairs. There's a central room, and that's where I spent most of my time, sitting on this bench without a back, working on sermons. And the man's oldest daughter lived in this room. Ellie and Melinda lived in this room. Their stuff was in this room, and the boy was over here. Here's another look at that. So here's Ellie's room. Here are their luggage and food stored in there. This was their room itself. Ellie's in the hammock. Melinda's in the bed. Here's the boys' room. There's my hammock that during the day I would put over here, but at night I would string it up kind of out in the middle of the room, and everybody had to go around it. And then that family lived in here. And this we know is Winnie the Pooh, but there they call it like Bogo or Bogey or something like that. So here's a view out down into the kitchen. And you can see that the way these roof lines match up, if you have a fire going in here, where would you expect the smoke to go? Well, up into your room, of course. Yeah, so that's what it did. So looking down from here, you can see these stairs can be quite frightening at night. In the yard are these birds called black vultures. They're a little bigger than ravens, and they are everywhere all the time, and they make a noise like a dog barking. Did you guys hear them? They sound like a dog. Woof, woof. So you think, oh, there's a dog out there. And you look, and it's just birds. But the dogs are around, and they come and get in the kitchen at night, so don't leave anything out. Here's a better view of the shower. It's just slats tied together around some frame with some grain bags as door, and the wind blows, and the grain bag flares open, so we had to figure out how to fix that. There's the bathroom. There you don't dig a hole because the water table is very high, so not very practical. So instead you build this up, and decomposition in the jungle is very rapid, so it doesn't accumulate underneath there like you might fear. here's the view out over the pond in the morning on the way to the bathroom. And here's Ellie. So I had 2 big suitcases. My stuff occupied a small backpack and a part of 1 suitcase. The rest were things for Ellie and Melinda. And here they are relishing the things that I brought, the Easter egg, chocolate Easter eggs, and the peanut butter cookies. And even though it was between meals, they took right to those cookies. Here's the view out the window, looking back towards the river over here. This little building over here is called the locale. That's where we had the meetings each night. This little building is the generator that they turn on every night at 6:30, and it runs till approximately 9:30, unless there's a football game on, and then it might go to 10. This is where the phone is located, so if you call Ellie, someone has to run through the mud up to their house to get them. This is the road, which even during fair weather can be not really that dry, but I guess it gets dry in the dry season, which I didn't experience. And there's what it's like on a rainy day. And everybody walks around in rubber boots, which is not what you think of as the jungle. So I had no rubber boots, but I did have sandals that I wore constantly, except for the nights of the meeting. Every evening I had to put regular shoes on and slog through that. And so those shoes will never be the same. So here's the phone arrangement. It's a satellite phone. Very strange to see your your solar panels facing north. Really weird, but it works there. So 2 phones. Here's a close-up. This phone eats your phone card minutes very rapidly. So you call out on this phone and hope people call you back on this phone, because that leaves the other phone for people to call out on. There's the church closer up. And inside, it's just a metal roof, slats on the walls, and a concrete floor. And when it rains, it's deafening on that metal roof. You cannot hear. Yeah, so Sabbath school, we spent listening to someone yelling and catching a few words here and there. From the church looking back, here's the home Ellie and Melinda are in. And then some of the side streets, not really up to what I call street standards, but you can see that you could get very wet walking around there. There's the generator building. This is a tree full of snakes. No, it's actually, these are some sort of fruit. I think they call them mangoes, and I don't know why. Not all building materials are the same. Hollow logs make very good culverts. All these power poles are concrete, because wood just doesn't last there. And here's walking around in the rainy season. Did a lot of visiting, going to various people's homes, having Bible studies with them, visiting them, encouraging them. Ellie and Melinda were trying to arrange a mass wedding. And the problem is there that it's complicated to get a marriage license. And it also costs money, and you have to have a certificate of singleness, because apparently people will be married to someone else, get tired of that, go and have a new relationship and get married to them, and so you need to verify that you are indeed single. You have to have your birth certificate. There's not a courthouse that you walk to where in these villages, so it's a very complicated thing. So Ellie and Melinda were working like crazy trying to get people's paperwork organized and get them motivated to pursue it, and it was occupying all their time and mental energy, and then it didn't work out. And then they restarted. They finally got all these people married yesterday, and there's still a few that didn't make it through the process. So now that they're all married, then now they're going to have a baptism as well. I think that's going on today, isn't it? Yeah, so today all these couples that finally are married are now getting baptized. So vexing work for them, but it's all paying off in the end, and God's worked quite a few miracles to accomplish that. All right, so here's visiting somebody else's kitchen. Some juxtaposition of china cabinets and the other decor. You can see the rubber boots and why you need them. And here's looking down the river. Everybody has these interesting boat motor arrangements. The boats are called pecky-peckies. I don't know if it's the boats or the motors that are called pecky-peckies. Do you know? Anyway, I think it's because they make a pecky-pecky noise as they drive. It's very loud. This is the 5-horse model, 5.5 horse model. And they go, there's a 5.5, a 9, and a 13, and a 13 mega. And I don't know what the mega does, but playground equipment. And so I arrive on a Thursday. I'm in Pucallpa. I was going to fly out to Ellie's that afternoon, but the weather turned bad, so we flew out Friday. Get there Friday afternoon. Sabbath morning, we're off to Nazareth, down the river, for church and to spend the Sabbath with those believers in Nazareth. Ellie loved driving, but she didn't drive very much. Mostly the guy that owned the boat did the driving, but got the photo op there. So we pull into the port of Nazareth. These people, their house is right there at the port, and they've kept it very nice. That's what I encountered right off, and after an initial alarm, I realized it was just a kid with a welding helmet on. But this is their compound that they live in there, and this is their kitchen, and I don't know what all the various buildings do. But these people are building the church there in their little property. And the furniture, this is amazingly heavy. It's very, very hard wood, but no nails or screws. Very convenient to have a durable furniture piece like that. So this family, this man is named Ebansis, and he is a school teacher. He went to college in Lima. He's a Shipibo Indian. Most of these people are. And he speaks Spanish, but he speaks mostly Shipibo is his primary language. He speaks Spanish and some English. And he was the only person there that I encountered that spoke any English. And his daughter Vanessa and her husband Nelson had lived in Peru, in Lima. I believe he is a fisherman, a marine fisherman. And they moved to Nazareth to resurrect the church. It was falling apart, basically. I mean, the members were all disbanded, basically. And so they're working to reorganize this church. Money from this church has gone to pay for some of the building materials. We paid for all the roofing materials for their new church, which should be built. They hope to dedicate it while Cindy and Natalie are there in a few weeks. And they're doing all the work on it themselves. And it's just more of the church service. So when you're a visitor, the expectation is that you will preach. And so I had no sermon prepared. So they said, okay, Tom, now time to preach. And so I said, I have nothing prepared, but let's pray about it. And so we prayed, and I got up. And I had been studying righteousness by faith as expressed in the three angels' messages. And so I started with verse 1 of Revelation 14. And lo, I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. So right off I said, so Melinda's translating for me. And I said, who are these 144,000? And they said, Nelson, the church leader, they're either angels or unfallen beings. We have some work to do here. And so immediately, Melinda and Ellie start talking to him in Spanish. I have no idea what they said, but they're in this kind of debate over who these beings are. And so that gave me a little time to study. And as that winds down, then I work them through the text. Okay, so which were redeemed from the earth, redeemed from among men. And we went to Revelation 7 and looked at it, that God's waiting to seal these people. Don't let the four winds of strife blow until he can seal his people. And so we finally convinced Nelson that these indeed were from people that were from earth. And so that was good. That was a good foundation. The problem was they'd had some Mormons come through. And the Mormon missionaries told them that these people were indeed not people, but some unfallen beings or angels. So that's something to clear up. So we talked more about, okay, how does one become sealed? What's the process? What is the deal here? And in the process of that, I started talking about the frontal lobe. We were going through the Depression Recovery Program. So I was talking about the frontal lobe of the brain and how important it is to have a healthy frontal lobe to understand and respond appropriately to God and to appreciate him. And so I was talking about the science behind that. And this guy's name is Abagail, and this is his wife. Well, they actually aren't married, but they're one of the couples that will be married through this process. He is a church member there in Lama, Korea. He had been a missionary through the Peru project at one point, but he'd kind of fallen away, but he was still connected with the church. He'd been a powerful mover in the church for the youth there, and he had taken us down there to Nazareth, just along for the ride. He was just sitting in the back, kind of just listening to things. I started talking about the frontal lobe and the science behind it, and he perked right up. And he was way into it ever since. I mean, after that, the whole thing was about, that he was into whatever we were talking about. And he asked me all kinds of stuff about it for days afterwards. That's what we talked about, is not just the frontal lobe, but all the science. How does a person respond to God appropriately? What is it how does it work? And talked about prophecy and all kinds. He just really opened his interest in this, and his interest in God was rekindled by this experience. Okay, so then after church, we ate and wandered around Nazareth. And again, this is also an old airstrip, but it's no longer used for that. Obviously, these power lines might be a challenge. So after that, then, went back to Amacaria, and we had every night then for the next Sunday through Friday night, we had meetings every night. Well, I had sermons that I'd given in Honduras, revival sermons. I had to go through all those and tailor them to this culture. They're in Spanish, fortunately, already, but I had to tailor them. The references, cultural references, were very different, and I had a lot of work to do to change them. And then I had to work with our translators. It was Ellie and Melinda. Ellie understood what I was talking about, but her mastery of the language is not where it should be, so she struggled some. So Melinda would be out in the audience saying, no, you said that wrong. And then Melinda has much better mastery of the language, coming from Belize, but she learned Spanglish. So she has a lot of English words that she doesn't really know what the Spanish equivalent is. But she also isn't super well educated and struggled with some of the concepts. And so then Ellie would be out in the audience and say, no, you said that wrong. And so each day we would go through the sermon, and I'd go through with them, okay, which of you is going to translate? So they'd work it out. And then, okay, now that we know who's translating, how should I say this so it's easiest for you? And that would take us all day. And so then finally in the evening, I could emerge from my room and go to the meeting. So the first night, we gave the pig sermon. You guys remember the pig sermon? Okay. Everyone remember the pig sermon? Okay, so it's about the straight and narrow path, and it's based on the prodigal son parable. You can't take your cherished sins with you on the narrow road. They don't fit along that straight gate. Second night, we talked about heaven's urgent appeal. It's about us. How do we become part of the 144,000? How would we be sealed? How would we receive the seal of God? And the four angels holding back the winds of strife. Can't read any of that because it's in Espanol. It's about the holding the winds of strife. Okay, yeah. And then the fourth night, the blessing, the gift of obedience, and how it is through the power of Christ that we obey, and he gives us that as a gift, his agape love. Talked about the pig of impatience that we met at the first night, and how we can have the pig of impatience or the patience of the saints, and that's a choice we make to receive God's agape or not. Jesus himself had relied completely on his Father, and we can of ourselves do nothing. Are you downsizing your mansions? That was the fourth night, talking about how there are consequences to all our choices here, and those are eternal consequences. And there's a work of preparation to be done. It's God's work to save us and transform us, but it's our work to surrender our wills, and that's a huge challenge. The blueprint for the bride. Have you seen that sermon? It's about the ketubah. It's about baptism, basically, the covenant we make with God in baptism. And it uses this story as, you recognize these people? John and Sharon Whitcomb. It uses their wedding as an example. I'm going to give some of these sermons here. They're fun. The last night was the faith of Jesus, and it's talking about how the Holy Spirit is our power to accomplish anything. God works through us through his Spirit. We have no strength of our own. We have to rely on that Spirit. And he is able to keep us from falling, present us before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy. So then the Sabbath, I gave my testimony for church, and then we were done. Then I was done with my preaching responsibility, so I could finally start enjoying some of the other things going on there. And so Ellie and Melinda took me one evening, Sunday evening, we went out through the jungle. This is an ant nest. They make these way up in the trees. They build these nests, and they have a covered tube that they've built that they go up in so they're not subject. There's birds. There are birds that are just ant obligates. That's all they eat, ants. So off through the jungle we went. Cindy expected snakes to be leaping from every bush, but I only saw one. We went to this other river called the Siparia River, a very different kind of river, much more like, say, the lower Wenatchee River. Here's what they call a chakra. It's just a big clearing that someone's made in the jungle where they are growing their crops. And then they grow crops there for a while, and then they'll just abandon it, and the jungle will take it over again. There's my snake. Some very interesting flowers. Then we had more time for visiting. We went to Abigail and Jenny's. They fed us a lot there, which was a huge blessing. This is their courtyard that they live in. They have all the various fruit trees out there, and a picnic table that we sat at every night. This is yucca. It's a potato-like tuber, and they grated it up, wrapped it in banana leaves, and boiled it, and this is how it came out. Looked like a halibut fillet to me, but it tasted very much like kind of mashed potato-y. And here we're making peanut brittle. We shelled a bunch of peanuts, and then oh, wait, I got to show you. This little thing here, this is a drink that they make out of plantains. Plantains are like a staple. Everybody eats plantains. So they spread this peanut brittle out in this. This is a part of a banana frond. And it's smooth and a good place to, just a nice trough to spread that out in. Then it cools in there. And then we enjoyed it. And this is some weird fruit that grows on a palm. I didn't eat any of it, but this is what it looks like inside. This is a bizarre fruit, Sputnik. That's what it looks like inside. It actually tastes very good. My friend showed up upstairs then as we were packing to go. So I guess it wanted to say goodbye. And so here we're getting ready to leave. This boat, this is a transport boat. It shows up. It's full of new concrete power poles. And the way they get those out is kind of interesting. Oh, there's actually more to it than that. I wonder what happened.
Oh, it's going to swing around. Oh, wow.
And it's nice how to see how everybody helps.
Yeah.
Notice this little vehicle. These are very common. It's like a tractor-like front end that hooks to a trailer, and sometimes they have even more attachments to it. This was the only real tractor I saw there. These other things are called Kubotas. And they're helpful because everything comes in on boat, and they don't have any way to unload it but what you just saw. So they come in these little pieces, and they put them together. Okay. And they haul everything in these other little boats. So off we go. This is a raft of logs. They go out into the jungle and cut wood for months, and then they'll raft it all together and ship it down to a mill. They have logs that sink, and they have to tie those to the logs that float, and then they ship them all out. We stopped by to see Nelson and Nazaret on our way out, and then off we went. So we went from here, we went over to Iparia, went through this little side channel to Iparia, then went by motor car over here to meet these people. They were going to take us to where we were building the boat. There's a guy that's building a boat. Our church is paying for the boat and the motor combined between, anyway, long story. But there's a guy there that's donating. He's a boat builder. He's donated his time to build this boat for them so they aren't relying on this super slow public transportation. So here's Iparia up close. And we go along here and then through some weird little channel into this lake. And then we go along this river back to this village of Urtucuro. And that's where they're building the boat. So here we are coming into Iparia. These are, this is Abel, is one of the Almacaria elders. And Pablo, he's one of the taller men in the village. I had to duck for a while. Hear the pecky motor? There were some monkeys in the tree. So this is Josue and Uber. This guy's name is Milar. His dad is building the boat.
Okay. Is it clear?
It's a little bit larger. I think the river passes way, but it's like this for hours.
Okay. So here we arrived at the place where they're building the boat. And this is the gentleman that's building the boat. There we are all gathered, and couldn't get him to smile, but here's his son Milar. And ubiquitous laundry. And here's a motor car, one of the things I was talking about. They had a pet monkey named Vicky. This woman was doing this Shipibo needlework. She said it takes her about a month to do one of these skirts. They use them for special ceremonies and events. We went to the place where they got the wood for the boat. So they took us off through this wild, it was even narrower, tighter jungle trip through the weird little channel to get to this place. And we go out, and here's where they milled the wood, just right there in the woods. They take these chainsaw mills with them and mill them up right there. So it's called alligator tree. Here's another tree that was nearby. They tried to build it out of this kind of wood, but it's too hard, so they're going to use it for furniture instead. So these are a huge, huge looking tree. It has these massive buttresses, but it's kind of deceiving because it actually looks like this. This is one that's cut down. You can see it has these buttresses, but then, well, they're quite tall, right, 200 feet or so. But here's what they look like from above. These buttresses go out. It's kind of like a nerve cell or something. So back through the jungle, here's a little thing we went through. I'm not going to show you another video. Back trying to get to Iparia before the Colectivo leaves Pucallpa, so we were racing past all these other vehicles. Here they have very common sight, boats just full of plantains. You get to the Colectivo, come in, you hang your hammock up. That's your seat. And here's a load of firewood that prevents access to the bathroom, so you have to go out over the top and around through this surprising little way. Very sharp-nosed boat. They just plow them into the bank at the villages that they stop in, and so there's still dirt on the bow. There's the toilet that can't see in this picture, but there's a board right here that keeps you from falling out through this rusted wall. And the river literally is, there's like 3 or 4 inches of freeboard above the river out there, and you can see it gurgling out behind you. And then we come to the port, 3:30 in the morning. It's entirely full. No place to dock. And I thought, well, we'll have to wait around out here till somebody leaves. No, there's a reason these boats are long and pointed and narrow. You come up to a place and you think, well, I'll fit in there, and then you just kind of gun your way in, so you spread the other boats apart, and there we are. And so we crawl out onto the plantain-smeared deck, and no, not OSHA approved either, up onto the roofs of these other boats and made our way out of there. And the next day I flew home. So right now, one of the things, I guess, we're ways past time, but I'm trying to close here with what they're trying to accomplish there. What I realized when I got there is that these people have, because of where they are, civilization has found them. but they don't know what to do with it. They're not prepared. It's like letting a kid into a candy store without any supervision. And so they're exposed to all kinds of things in our civilization that are really not things that are going to be good for them. But they don't know that. And so they're partaking of whatever. And so most of them have lost their first love. And there's lots of backsliding in the church. The other thing I realized was they have a lot of superstitions still, even though there's government schools there and they're all run through the government school programs. They have a lot of misunderstandings. They don't understand what's going on out in the world at large. They have some exposure to the news, but when they get media, that's not what they're particularly interested in. They're interested in pop culture sort of things. So the context for them for prophecy is very strained. It's like a misfit. It doesn't mismatch. So I said, we had a question and answer period at the end of the meetings, and people turned in their questions. Lots of people wanted to know more about agape, God's unselfish love, and I was really happy about that, and we talked more about that. They also had lots of concerns about sealing. How do we become sealed? How do we get the seal of God? What's the mark of the beast? They were pretty confident, especially when I started talking to them. I'm a fisheries biologist. We use these little radio frequency identification chips called pit tags. Off they went, talking about the mark of the beast. Getting these pit tags is the mark of the beast. Don't get the chip. Apparently they have, it's kind of like government assistance of some sort for senior citizens, and they have a challenge with identification there. You know, people live out in the jungle. They don't have any paperwork on themselves. Why would they? And so they are frequently worried about fraud, so they're asking these people to get an identification chip put in them once they can verify who they are, so that then they can always be the correct recipient of the government aid. And they're in a quandary. Do we allow ourselves to get the chip? Will that be the mark of the beast? So I had to talk them off of that ledge, and if that's the case, then millions and millions of fish every year get the mark of the beast, and all the cattle that we tag. And so I had to explain to them the mark of the beast, but I also had to explain to them one of the questions: why did Jesus have to die on the cross? Oh, that's fundamental to everything. So I had to tell him, you had a pride problem crop up in heaven. Someone wanted to be like God. Selfishness arose. Then it spread to our world with our Adam and Eve fell. So God has a choice. What does he do? He can destroy the sinners. Well, what would that do? Was that a good choice? What would that do? Would people trust God after that? Would they be inclined to believe Satan? Okay, so that's not a good option. God doesn't want to be worshipped out of fear. He could destroy his law. Wouldn't that take care of it? Oh, wait. The law is unselfish love. We can't destroy that. Everything hinges on that. Okay, he can sacrifice himself. He destroyed his son instead to save the law and the sinner. And they got it. I was pleased to see they got that. It was moving for them to appreciate that. But I started talking about prophecy. Do you guys have any idea what's going on in the rest of the world? Do you know that almost all of Daniel 11 is fulfilled? Do you know that our country, do you know what's going on in the United States? Our constitutional crisis that we're having. Last several administrations are increasingly eroding our constitutional rights. We're this close to making an image to the beast. Do you guys know anything about that? Nothing. They don't have any context at all. They don't know what's going on in the Middle East. They don't know anything. Very interesting. So would a prophecy seminar in its normal state worked very well there? It would have been kind of out of context. So anyway, what are we doing as a church? We have, your board has elected to support 2 more teams of Bible workers, all through the Peru project, going out into areas. These are native people or Spanish people. We're trying to get Shipibo speakers to go out because Spanish is a second language for most of these people. And so we're supporting 4 people, it's $120 a month per person. Yes. Just like we're doing for the Africa missionaries. And then they have other projects they're funding. The money you guys sent with me paid for the motor for that boat and the roof for Nazareth Church, some improvements to the Waipa Church, and Bibles for Amakaria and several other smaller things. But there is a fund in your bulletin. You'll see underneath at the very bottom there on page 2, there's the Africa Missionary Fund, and then underneath that, Peru Project. In hand, that's what we have. They have additional, one of the things that Ellie and Melinda want to build a pastoral home there so they don't have to live with these people. I mean, there's lots of problems with them living where they are, not the least of which are the drunk people. So they were waiting for the community to give them the land, and then they were going to build this church. And so they have, part of this will go to fund that. Am I missing stuff, Mel? I should know this, but I'm trying to think of what else we talked about. Yes, there's a couple that are so the new ones that they've already have them. We got the email from Ebenezer this morning, or it was last night. Anyway, that they have this couple now. They're in place. They went to a village that's so remote that, first of all, they have their cost to get to Peru, to Pucallpa. They bore their own cost for that. But getting them out to this other village, it was $900 just to get them out there. There's multiple stops on the plane to get this couple out there. And so, yeah, that, and was anything else that anyway, there's more. Most of these communities have really broken down churches and they need help. We don't want to just come in and build a church for them. We want them to be part of it. So we'll offer them assistance, but they need to provide labor or materials or some funding for it. Yes, Lynn. Yeah, I'm not sure. The building for that church in Nazareth, it was 2,100 soles, which is about almost $700 for all the roofing material and for the gas to get their lumber all milled and out of the woods to this place. And so that was a pretty big building. I think you could do a home for probably a fraction of, well, I don't know. It depends on how much volunteer labor and other materials there are. So we don't know yet. We're waiting to get that confirmed. So anyway, I should let us go since we're a quarter after. But if you have any questions, please see Cindy's been in communication with them a lot. And she's going in May. She's going to be there till the end of June, till the end of May. She and Natalie. And so we'll continue to have updates. So, and then Brianna's going to be there in June. So let's pray to end. Dear Father, the work is huge. There's so much to do. We see here how difficult it is to attract interest, I guess, in spiritual things. And we always hope that maybe it'll be different in other lands, but we see that Satan's at work there too. We ask that you bind him and send your angels to lighten these people's lives up with a desire for the truth. Please pour your Spirit out on them. Give them a desire to know you, to submit to your will, to find the joy of forgiveness and peace with you and freedom from the sins and the superstitions that bind them now. Please bless Ellie and Melinda as they work there, and Josue and Uber and the other teams. There's 20 teams out there right now. Please bless them all with your Spirit and your angels to go with them and guide them. Please, the ones that were not able to finish their paperwork and get their wedding taken care of and their baptism, please continue to impress them to move through this process so that they can receive baptism. Thank you so much that you are at work. We can see the miracles that you've worked, and we can see the providences that you are constantly involved in people's lives, leading them to truth. And we're so grateful that you give us the privilege of being part of that effort. Please inspire us with a desire for the salvation of others and of submission to your will and of being filled with your love for others. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so the closing hymn is 5:37. He leadeth me.